What if I told you that a well-known pastor, trusted by thousands, was using the money donated to help the poor to fund his luxurious lifestyle and businesses? In today's story, we uncover how one pastor's fraudulent charitable trust deceived people for years and what happened when his lies were exposed. Stay tuned until the end to see how he was caught and what this means for charities today. If you're shocked by this story, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on similar eye-opening investigations. Let's get into it. Pastor Daniel Okoye was a well-known Nigerian pastor living in the United States with his wife and children. He had built a strong reputation in his church community for his emotional and charismatic preaching. Every Sunday, his church was packed, with both Nigerians and non-Nigerians attending, eager to hear his sermons about helping the less fortunate. Though he lived comfortably in the U.S., Pastor Okoye frequently traveled to Nigeria, where he claimed he was providing aid to the poor. On these trips, he would take photographs of the most heart-wrenching scenes: starving children, families living in mud huts, and people suffering from preventable diseases. These images, accompanied by heartfelt captions, were shared on his social media platforms to create an emotional appeal for donations. Pastor Okoye's online presence was professional, with carefully curated content designed to tug at the heartstrings. The captions were filled with promises of providing medical care, food, and education for the children in these communities. His message was clear: with your donations, we can help these people. Upon his return to the United States, Pastor Okoye would host fundraising events at his church. These events were often emotional, with testimonies from supposed beneficiaries of his charity. During these events, he would show the pictures he'd taken in Nigeria, telling the congregation how their donations could make a difference in the lives of the people they saw on the screen. "I'm asking you today to make a difference in the lives of these children. What we give today will help them survive tomorrow," Pastor Okoye would say. His voice would crack with emotion as he described the suffering and hardship that the children endured. The generosity of his congregation was overwhelming. Thousands of dollars poured in during these events, with members pledging significant amounts, all believing they were helping to alleviate suffering. He was far from what he preached. While Pastor Okoye claimed the money was being used to feed the hungry and provide medical care, the bulk of it was funneled into his personal accounts and used to fund a lavish lifestyle. He had purchased multiple properties in Nigeria, including luxurious homes in Lagos and commercial buildings. He invested in gas stations and even opened hotels, all funded by the money he raised under the guise of charity. His personal wealth grew exponentially, while the people he promised to help remained in the same dire conditions. It wasn't until a young investigative journalist named Ayodele decided to dig deeper into Pastor Okoye's operations that the truth began to emerge. Ayodele had been covering stories of charity fraud in Nigeria for several years and had become increasingly suspicious of Pastor Okoye's growing wealth despite his supposed charitable endeavors. She started by reaching out to local leaders in Nigeria who had supposedly received aid from Okoye's foundation. To her surprise, many of them had never seen a dime of the promised funds. Some of the individuals in his photos, she discovered, had no idea that their images were being used to solicit donations. Others admitted that they had been photographed and asked to smile for the camera, but none of them had ever received any help. Ayodele's investigation uncovered that the majority of the funds raised by Pastor Okoye were not being sent to Nigeria at all.
Instead, the money was being deposited into offshore accounts linked to Pastor Okoye's business ventures in Nigeria. He had used the donations to expand his business empire, while those he claimed to help were left in the same condition, if not worse. Ayodele's story was published in a well-known Nigerian newspaper, and the public outrage was swift. The fraudulent charitable trust that Pastor Okoye had built was exposed for what it truly was: a front for financial exploitation. Social media erupted with calls for accountability, and many of Okoye's followers began to question the legitimacy of the entire operation. His church, once a thriving hub of generosity, now faced an uncertain future. Many of his congregants who had donated with the best of intentions felt betrayed. Trust, once given freely, had now been shattered. As the story gained traction, authorities in both Nigeria and the United States launched an investigation into Pastor Okoye's financial activities. They traced the donations to his personal accounts and businesses, uncovering the scale of his deception. Pastor Okoye's reputation, which had taken years to build, was torn apart in mere weeks. His charitable trust was shut down, and the properties he had purchased with the stolen funds were seized by authorities. His filling stations and luxury homes were frozen as part of the investigation. In Nigeria, local businesses that had been indirectly affected by his fraudulent practices began to distance themselves from him. The Nigerian government also intervened, investigating the tax implications of his actions and seeking ways to recover the stolen funds. Pastor Okoye was arrested in the U.S. on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The legal proceedings were swift, and his defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence. In a high-profile trial, Pastor Okoye was convicted on all charges. The court heard from numerous victims, including individuals who had donated large sums of money, trusting that their contributions would improve the lives of the poor in Nigeria. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison, with no chance of parole.
The court also ordered the confiscation of all assets acquired through fraudulent means, and Pastor Okoye's businesses were liquidated to repay the victims. His charitable trust was dissolved, and he was permanently banned from running any future charitable organizations. Pastor Okoye's case became a cautionary tale about the dangers of fraudulent charitable trusts. It sparked widespread conversations about the need for transparency and regulation in charitable giving. Many of his followers, once loyal, were left heartbroken, feeling betrayed by the very man they had trusted to guide them in faith and charity. Ayodele, the journalist who had uncovered the fraud, continued her work, helping to implement measures to ensure that charitable organizations were properly monitored. For those who had been deceived, the damage was done. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. But for the people in Nigeria, at least some justice had been served. This story serves as a reminder that fraudulent charitable trusts are real, and they can deceive even the most well-meaning individuals. Always do your research before donating, and remember that transparency is key in charity fundraising. If you want to stay informed on more fraud stories and learn how to protect yourself from falling victim to scams like this, subscribe to our channel. Like this video if you found it eye-opening, and share it with others to raise awareness.